Here's a problem no doctor in 17th century Rome could solve. A man dies. He'd been ill for about 2 weeks. Fatigue, then stomach cramps, then vomiting, then a slow decline nobody could pin down. Doctor visited 3 times, prescribed rest. Did everything right. Post-mortem examination, clean. No wounds, no obvious disease, no poison detected, because in the 1650s there was no test for it. Death recorded as natural causes. His widow is grief-stricken. She'd called the doctor herself, nursed him personally. She even demanded the post-mortem when the neighbors started whispering. She is completely above suspicion. She is also the one who killed him, and she is not the only one. Across Rome, in the same years, the same pattern, wealthy husbands dying at a rate nobody can explain. Slow decline. Baffled physician. Grieving above reproach wife. Clean post-mortem. Case closed. The Vatican is quietly alarmed. And somewhere in the candlelit back streets of the Eternal City, a woman is selling small vials of clear liquid to a very specific clientele. No color, no smell, no taste, completely undetectable. 4 drops in a glass of wine. 2 weeks later, a natural death. The liquid is called Aqua Tofana. It would terrify kings, be blamed for Mozart's death, and spark poisoning panics from Rome to Paris to Versailles. This is the true crime story the history books keep sanitizing and the internet keeps getting wrong. Because the full version is darker, stranger, and far more morally complicated than women poisoned their husbands. A criminal network hiding in plain sight, a papal sting operation, a courtroom where the accused refused to break, and a body count of around 600 men spanning 2 decades and 3 cities. Let's open the case. The origin story is genuinely slippery. The internet presents it as settled fact, but a lot of it is legend retold and embellished for 4 centuries. So let's be straight about what we actually know. In 1633, in Palermo, Sicily, a woman named Tofana d'Adamo was arrested and executed for distributing an arsenic-based poison she'd been selling to other women. The execution was brutal. Some accounts say hanged, drawn, and quartered. One account says she was sewn alive into a canvas sack and thrown from the roof of the bishop's palace into the street. Either way, not subtle. She is almost certainly where this story begins. Connected to her, possibly her daughter, possibly not, historians disagree, is the woman who becomes the legend. Her name is Aqua Tofana. She was probably from Sicily, probably a widow, and at some point in the 1630s she arrives in Rome, one of the most politically complex cities in Europe, packed with Vatican intrigue and a criminal underworld of astrologers, alchemists, midwives, and poisoners, all operating just below the surface of respectable society. Julia sets up shop. Aqua Tofana was arsenic-based. Historians agree on that. It possibly also contained lead and belladonna, the same plant women were dropping in their eyes as a cosmetic. The exact formula was lost deliberately. Julia kept the recipe in her head. What made it extraordinary wasn't just the ingredients, it was the engineering, colorless, odorless, tasteless, 4 to 6 drops enough to kill an adult man. And crucially, a slow. First dose, weakness, fatigue, totally explainable. Second dose, stomach pain, vomiting. Doctor called. Assumes a worsening fever. Third or fourth dose, the man deteriorates and dies. Quietly. Without obvious violence. With symptoms that looked, to every physician of the time, like a natural progressive illness. No toxicology in the 1650s. No way to test for arsenic post-mortem. The wife wasn't under suspicion. She was at the bedside, calling the doctor, nursing him, demanding the post-mortem herself, because she knew it would show nothing. To distribute it, Julia hid the poison in bottles labeled Manna di San Nicola, a common devotional cosmetic with a picture of St. Nicholas on the label. You're not buying poison, you're buying face cream with a picture of a saint on it. She built a network, a midwife for poorer clients, women of standing for the nobility, a priest who allegedly supplied the arsenic through his apothecary brother. Even the supply chain had plausible deniability built in. Here's the part that makes this more than a murder story. The women buying Aqua Tofana were not thrill killers. The 1659 trial records show women from across the social spectrum, noble women, merchants' wives, Working-class women, all with variations of the same problem. A violent husband, a husband gambling away the family's money, a husband blocking access to her own dowry. Divorce not available. The Catholic Church said no. Separation nearly impossible. Running away. With what money, to whom? Arsenic was called inheritance powder in Italy at the time. That name is doing a lot of work, because what these women were trying to inherit wasn't wealth. It was just their own lives back. That doesn't make it murder any less. But it does make it something more than simple crime. It's what happens when a legal system offers a group of people no legitimate exit and then acts surprised when they find an illegitimate one. Girolamo Spana, who ran the network after Giulia, reportedly said on the steps of the gallows, "I've given this liquid to more people than I've got hairs on my head." Bravado or confession? Possibly both. A woman who'd bought the poison went to confession and told her priest she'd been planning to use it on her husband. The priest passed it up the chain. The papal authorities launched an investigation. Their method, a sting operation. An undercover agent posing as an unhappy wife approached the network, made the exchange. The moment she had the bottle, officers stepped out from hiding. The liquid was tested on stray animals. It killed them quickly. In January 1659, Giovanna de Grandi, one of the main sellers, was arrested and started naming names. Then Girolamo Spana herself was brought in. Here's the detail worth remembering. Spana, described by contemporary sources as intelligent, self-assured, and confident, refused to break. Months of interrogation. She talked freely about people's family histories, their residences, harmless details, and gave nothing incriminating. She was convicted anyway. On July 5, 1659, Girolamo Spana and 4 associates were hanged in the Campo dei Fiori, the same square where the philosopher Giordano Bruno had been burned at the stake 60 years earlier. One client executed, more than 40 others sentenced to life imprisonment. The women who made the poison, the papal authorities decided, were more guilty than the women who used it. That hierarchy of blame tells you exactly what they were worried about. Even after the executions, it didn't stop. The recipe survived. It spread. Within 20 years, Paris was in the grip of its own scandal. The affair of the poisons, 1677 to 1682. A network supplying poison to the French aristocracy with tentacles into the court of Louis XIV. Almost identical mechanics to Rome, and the legend kept growing. By the 1700s, Aqua Tofana had become a catch-all term across Europe for any slow, undetectable, lethal poison. Even Mozart got pulled in. Dying of an unexplained illness in 1791, age 35, he reportedly told his wife, "I am sure I have been poisoned. I cannot rid myself of this idea." He named Aqua Tofana. Modern historians are confident he hadn't been given it, but the fact that a dying man in 1791 instinctively reached for that name tells you how deep the legend had sunk into the European imagination. Here's the honest version. Parts of this are documented. Tofania d'Adamo executed in 1633. Girolamo Spana executed in 1659. The trial records exist. Arsenic was being distributed to women in Rome who used it to kill their husbands. That happened. The number 600? Legend probably exaggerated across centuries of retelling. The full biography of Giulia Tofana, her origins, her death date, whether she was ever caught, genuinely disputed by modern historians. But strip the myth out and you're still left with this. A network of women operating in secret for decades, selling poison to other women who had no legal mechanism to leave marriages that were destroying them. The system created the demand. The network met it. Historians argue about whether Giulia Tofana was a criminal, a feminist icon, a businesswoman, or a legend. Probably all of those things are partially true, and none of them is the complete picture. What we know for certain, she apparently died quietly in her sleep while everyone else got the news, which honestly might be exactly how she would have wanted it. Subscribe. The next case is even worse.